People started calling you Mini Messi. Do you remember like hearing that nickname for the first time? How did you feel?
Yeah, it was actually our coach, Mark Sampson. He said it in an interview after the Mexico game. They said, "Oh, Mark Sampson's called you Mini Messi." And there was a moment in me I was like, "Oh, that's really, really nice, like that he has called me that." And then it was like a lot of pressure. Because then I was like, oh my God, people are going to turn into the next game and expect this young girl to just run for everyone and put the ball in the corner, you know? And I was like, oh my God.
Today, I am so excited to welcome an absolute legend of the game, England's own Fran Kirby. In Fran's 15 years in professional soccer, she has changed the game both on and off the field. A longstanding member of the Euro-winning Lionesses and Chelsea's top ever scorer with 116 goals to her name, Fran now plays for Brighton in the WSL. She made headlines when she made the move, and now Fran and Brighton have their sights set on building something special. I played against Fran on the national team and also while I was at Man City, and her final pass still haunts my dreams. Fran Kirby, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That was a lovely intro.
I'm so honored that you're here, and I'm excited to get to know you a little bit better. You're a record setter. You're a hero of club and country, but I know that you are also a dog lover. I read that your new city, Brighton, is one of the UK's top dog cities because I know it has like lots of green spaces, and then there's dog-friendly pubs, and I needed to ask about the pubs. Like, can you just bring your dog? I know you have a cockapoo.
Yes, I do. Wow, you have done your research.
I know.
Yes,
we did our research.
To be fair, a lot of the pubs in England, you can take your dog along with you. It's quite a dog-friendly place. I think, yeah, he is the best thing that I ever decided to do. And yeah, he's great. He's currently asleep on the sofa. So if someone knocks on the door, he's going to start probably barking and going crazy. But yeah, I'll get him at the end and you can say hello to him.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm like obviously obsessed with dogs. I also have a little dog, a Cavapoo. His name is Finn, and like, this funny thing always happens when I'm recording where somebody will like obviously come knock on the door during the recording, and then Finn barks.
Exactly. When we're recording now, and then it goes knock knock, and then it's just game over.
And I'm like, nobody ever comes here, and now you're freaking coming here right in the middle of my job. Did you like have dogs growing up? When you got Cody, did you like know what role he would fill in your life?
No, but I've always loved dogs. So literally, I think I'd been pestering my parents literally from the age of like, as soon as I could talk, basically, that I wanted to have a dog. And it was never going to work with, you know, obviously they were working full time. And when we came home, it was then going to training with me. It just wouldn't have been fair. But I was still like, no, we'll make it work. Like, it's fine. Like, I'm 10 years old. I can definitely walk this dog by myself at 9 o'clock. Like, it's not a problem. And then obviously when I got to a certain age, my dad was like, look, when you move out, you can get a dog. Like, because then you are responsible for that dog. So then when I got injured, I'd been injured for quite a long time, and I was sat on the sofa with Beth England, who absolutely loves dogs. So whatever I was going to say about dogs, it was never going to be a no, basically. So I was like, shall I just go and get a dog? And, you know, normally a normal friend would be like, do you think you could do this? Like, do you think you have the time? She was like, yes, absolutely, let's go. So it literally next day went to go and look and picked him up a week later. And yeah, he's been probably, yeah, like I said, the best thing I've probably done, especially when you're in a sport that's so emotional. Mm-hmm. When you have something to come home to that doesn't care how you did the day of the game, or if you lost, if you won, if you were in a bad mood, it was just, you come home to this safety. And yeah, he's played a massive role. I'm talking to him like he's like my child, you know, he's just changed my life.
Yeah. I know. Like,
people literally who don't like dogs have definitely just like scrolled past that. Oh God,
Well, shout out to Beth England for being like such a good influence in helping you make that decision.
She loves him as well. Like, as soon as she walks in the door, like, he literally will go insane. Like, it's literally like his most favorite person. Like, I think I'm literally second in that relationship. Like,
what a good auntie.
Yeah. She has her own dog now, so it's like trying to compete. But I think Cody's always the first one, so he's the baby.
Oh my gosh, that is so sweet. Well, I do want to get into some soccer stuff. We could talk about dogs for 30 minutes.
If you have to,
I would literally love that. So for our mostly American audience, I want to talk about you as a player a little bit. You're really one of one. You're such a force in English women's soccer. As a playmaking midfielder who can both score and assist with ease, I feel like during your stint at Chelsea with Sam Kerr, every single game there was like goal and assist for Fran, goal and assist for Sam, and you guys would like just assist each other constantly. And I just feel like you bring such a magic to the game. Your vision and your technical ability is top notch. So I want to go back to the beginning where you must have learned all of this. You often describe yourself as just a young girl from Reading. You grew up in the academy there. You were playing up several age groups with the under 12s when you were maybe only 7 or 8. And you have said that you were kind of intimidated by the other girls. So what I want to know is if you remember like maybe a specific moment or the first moment where that intimidation kind of fell away and you finally started to feel at home on the pitch.
It was obviously, when you look back now to women's football, we're talking 20 odd years ago now. It wasn't obviously where it is now in terms of the opportunities, in terms of however many girls are playing it, which is obviously great and fantastic for where the game is now. But for me, I didn't have anyone really my age who was playing football. There was a group of us, but it wasn't really enough to make a team. So that's why we kind of had to go up and go and train with the olders. And I've always been quite short and small. I still am now. I still look at some people in the game. I'm like, oh my God, you're really tall. But I think that's for everyone when I stand next to them. And I think when I was back then, it was just so intimidating seeing these girls in all of their, they had the proper training kit and they were coming with their water bottles. And it just looked so professional and just so like out of I had no idea what was going on. I just went and played football with my brother or at school. It was just something completely different to going in this, there's a coach in full training kit or whatever it was. And I think it was just the whole experience of it just terrified me. And I've always been quite introverted as a person as well. So I don't really express much until I'm on a football pitch and then I'm a completely different person. So I think it was just that. And I think it wasn't until I didn't go for months. So they were asking me to go for a long time to go and train with the older ones. And I was like, no. I would honestly be crying in the car on the way home to my mum. I'd be like, I'm not going. I think it was just a case of, okay, I'm going to try. I'll try. And if I don't like one session, then at least I've tried. And then I went and I trained and I was like, oh, actually, I'm not too bad compared to these girls. Like I can hold my own. And I think it was just then my confidence just grew. And that was just what it was. I just made a decision. I'm just going to try and see what happens.
Oh, wow. Well, we're so glad that you did. After about 10 years playing with the academy in Reading, you started getting noticed by the senior national team. That's the Lionesses. And then when you were 20 years old, you got called up. You were the first Women's Super League Tier 2 player to be named to the Lionesses. You even scored your very first time on the field in an international game. And then shortly after that, you were offered Reading Football Club's first professional women's football contract. And you've mentioned this a little bit, but now you're 20. Now you're like getting reps with the national team. This is the first professional contract. Like, what was women's football like at that time? And how did that contract kind of change your day-to-day life as a footballer?
It was insane, the change. It was a case of, so before I was working at Reading while I was playing with them, so like semi-pro or whatever, wasn't really getting paid, but I had a job in the community. So my job was basically to go around all the schools and provide girls-only football sessions. So that was kind of my job throughout the day, which I loved. It started from being like one school to then having 2 schools every single day. So it kind of grew into something that was amazing. And that was kind of my job, and also coaching in the girls' academy as well. So I was doing that as well in the evening. So my days were literally like 9 o'clock till
Packed.
3, training, these young girls, driving around Reading, going into different schools and trying to promote the girls only and training them and doing all of that. And then in the evening at 5 till 7, I would be at the academy training with the academy. And then 8 till 10 o'clock would be women's training. So it was, and then obviously,
Wow.
when back then it was semi-pro. So I would get up in the morning to go to the gym, for example, before, because obviously you had to do extra things. It wasn't enough training 2 times, 3 times a week with the women's team to keep yourself, at a level that you want, especially when I got into the national team. It was, I had to do more. And yeah, so that was kind of my weekly day. And then it just all of a sudden changed. I think Reading had heard that I'd had quite a bit of people were talking about me and wanting to maybe sign me. And so it was when Jane Ludlow was there, and she was kind of like, we've got to get Fran on a contract here. Otherwise, we're going to lose her to a WSL 1 team. And they knew I was a home girl. They knew that I loved to be at home and be around my people. And yeah, and then they offered me a contract, which basically meant that I could go and train with the boys' academy during the day. So I would
that's great.
Yeah, it was their under 16s, I think it was, that I would go and train with. And, I'd go and play futsal with them. I would go and train with them during the day. And that was amazing. That was such an amazing experience for me because, they were starting to develop as well. They were getting bigger, they were getting stronger, they were getting faster. So I really had to step up and basically, train at their level basically. And then in the evenings I would still go and train 8 till 10 with the women's team. So I was basically a professional footballer, but training with a boys academy team and then going to play with my team. So yeah, I absolutely loved it. And of course I think it's one of the biggest reasons why I've gone on to be the player that I am, was them moments of, okay, let's take this step with Fran and get her in to train with the boys academy.
That's such a unique path. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like that's not a journey that I've heard before. And I've actually talked to a lot of English players like our age, like Jill Scott, who have been through crazy stories through the leagues and through the ranks. But something like that is not really one I've really heard before, especially playing in tier 2 and being on the national team. I just think that's such a testament to your skill and your commitment to growing your game and putting yourself in the best situations to succeed. So in 2015, when you were just 21, you made your World Cup debut for England. You scored against Mexico. You helped England move on in the tournament where you guys took home the bronze. And this was like your introduction to the world, to Chelsea. Chelsea makes a record offer to sign you. And this was like the birth of a nickname. I'm like embarrassed to ask you about this, but I hope you like it. People started calling you Mini Messi. Do you remember like hearing that nickname for the first time? How did you feel?
Yeah, it was actually our coach, Mark Sampson. He said it in an interview after the Mexico game, the one that I had scored in, and he said it on BBC. And I was quite young at the time, so obviously, I hadn't had any media training whatsoever. Like I said, I always say I was a young girl from Reading coming through. I'd never had a camera put in front of me before. I'd never, had to answer any kind of interviews. And they said, "Oh, Mark Sampson's called you Mini Messi." And there was a moment in me I was like, oh, that's really, really nice. Like that he is.
Yeah.
And then after that, it then became like this massive thing. Like I'd never experienced it to just get as big as it did in terms of like my name, and my picture was all over the internet, and the headline was Mini Messi. And then it was like a lot of pressure. Because then I was like, oh my God, people are going to turn into the next game and expect this young girl to just run for everyone and put the ball in the corner, And I was like, oh my God. But, obviously it was a massive compliment by the manager, but it obviously came with a lot of pressure. And that nickname still follows me around to this day in terms of when people talk about me, or if you ask my family if they're speaking to someone at the pub or whatever, they're like, oh yeah, that's the Mini Messi, isn't it? It's still to this day kind of hangs around, and I'm like, oh my God, it's still like sticking around with these people.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Sometimes you just can't get rid of those nicknames, but it obviously it's like a huge honor and also very fitting. But I always am like hesitant to compare women to men's players, but I feel like in this instance it was kind of like, this is fun, and like obviously it's Messi, so it's like, that's so sick.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was great, and I was like, oh, that's super nice of him that he like compares me in that way. But I think the same as you, when you start comparing the two or whatever, I think it's difficult, because then, like I said, as the player, people watch on TV, and like I said, like the next game I don't think I played very well, and then comes the trolls, and then comes, I think it was quite extreme for even back then for me. No one really watched women's football, but from that moment I just felt like it was just so overwhelming, and it probably wasn't even anything, but it was because I've never experienced it before. I've never experienced people going, oh, they're calling her Mini Messi, but she's absolutely rubbish. Like she couldn't complete a pass today. And it was like very overwhelming. My first World Cup, first big kind of media thing, and then that was happening. I was like, oh, okay, get used to this. Like this is going to follow you now.
Yeah. And I mean, I imagine that moment was kind of foreshadowing of what was to come. You did make this move to Chelsea. You were there for 9 years, and you were a goal scoring machine. You scored a record 116 goals. I mentioned that earlier. You helped Chelsea win 7 league titles, 4 FA Cups, 2 Conti Cups, and more. A couple of those were when I was at Man City, and I was so bummed to not win anything except that 1 FA Cup. And all of this with Chelsea was under Emma Hayes, who's obviously now coaching our U.S. women's national team. Chelsea, the club itself, went on quite a journey during this time. I mean, I think when you first got there, the club was not as professional as it is now. And I think that Emma was a big part of helping create that change. And I kind of see your journey, Chelsea's journey, Emma's journey, all kind of like on this parallel path of growth together. So I feel like I want to know what Emma was like back at the beginning of your time at Chelsea. Do you have any stories about you and her's initial few years together?
I think obviously we all know that Emma, once she gets something in her mind, it's got to happen. And, it was one of the main reasons why I joined the club. I spoke to Emma, and I spoke to her about the vision that she sees the club going into and what she wants to create there. And when Emma talks to you about something, you believe it. She could be telling the most absolute lies, but you will believe it because, she's so passionate about the game and she wants to grow the game. And I think that was what kind of drew me into, going to sign for her and wanting to play for her and wanting to play for the club, because, there's a lot of clubs out there that say, we want to do this, we want to do that, but they don't back it up with action. And I think when I walked in and met Emma for the first time and I met the people in the building, I was like, no, this is actually gonna go somewhere. And it's quite funny now because I look back at when I signed my contract, and now everyone does the nice, big pictures with the shirt or whatever. Mine is literally, my contract is on a table, I'm signing it, and someone's taking a picture of me from behind signing the contract. That was the picture. There was no like big fancy, this is who we've signed, look at the shirt or whatever, and I think it was rumored around as well. So I think they just wanted to get it done as quickly as possible and not do this big, hoo-ha and everything, and try and keep it under wraps as much as possible. So yeah, I think when you think of it like that and you see where it goes now, and you see, well, I did my contract extension at Stamford Bridge and I was able to, do kick-ups on the pitch, comparing that to taking a picture with a little contract is massively different.
It reminds me of when I got drafted into the NWSL, like the draft now, like obviously all the players go, like you could maybe, I don't know, 40 or 50 players go, and then they hope to get drafted, and then they go up and they take their picture and they make a speech. When I got drafted in 2015, I was at national team camp in LA, so I wasn't at the draft, and I read that I got drafted 4th to Western New York on a tweet, and then I put my phone back down and I went back to sleep because it was like 6:30 in the morning. And like to see now what getting drafted 4th like would look like is so funny, because I literally found out on Twitter and then turned my phone back over and went back to sleep. It's so cool to see how far the game has come.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, it's taken a while for it to get there. I think even for me, when you look kind of 5 years ago, like the difference between 5 years and now, like it's massive. And, when I first joined Chelsea, there was no changing rooms. We didn't have a changing room. It was a case of we turn up, we put our water bottles on the side and we go out to train. Whereas now, obviously, we've got a really, really lovely changing room down there, and the same at Brighton. It's it's beautiful now.
Yeah.
What facilities they are providing for female athletes and female players, and that's obviously something that we have been striving for such a long time. Those who found out they were being drafted through a text message or through a tweet, those are the people who've been fighting to get the nice video introduction of you and all these cool photos in fashion shows and everything like that. So yeah, it's nice to see where the game has grown from the beginning.
Definitely. Well, I know that those 9 years at Chelsea were not all trophies and records. You struggled with a couple of injuries, including a heart condition that could have ended your career. There are obviously some injuries and things we expect to deal with as players, but something like that must have been so scary. Do you mind just telling us how you found out something so serious was going on?
It was a really strange time. I had been feeling different for a while. I don't think I was feeling right for, I would say, around 5 to 6 months before actually something happened where I was like, okay, like there is something actually wrong. I remember I was walking the dog and I was saying to Marion, I was like, I just don't feel right. I was like, there's something wrong with me. I don't have energy. It doesn't matter what I do. Like I can train extra, I can do extra recovery, I can get treatment, I can eat, a specific diet. And I was like, and it's just not working. I was trying so many different things, but I would still wake up the next day like I'd played 100 minutes. And it was just never improving. And my mind was in a fog, and I was getting irritated a lot. I was getting moody in training, and I just wasn't a good person to be around. And I was like, that's not me. Like, it's not who I am. It's not who I've ever been. So then I was just kind of trying different things, and I actually started to feel a little bit better, which I don't know. My body was trying to maybe fight one last time. And then I actually collapsed at home. I was eating dinner and I got severe chest pain. And I was kind of like crawling around the table, and I was just going dizzy and really lightheaded. And yeah, I walked out of the room and just basically collapsed on the floor and woke up with my face being slapped and ambulance on the way, paramedics coming. And yeah, I honestly, like, I talk about it now, like I laugh about it because obviously it was, but I honestly thought at one point I was like, this is it. I was like, I'm having a heart attack, like 100%. Like it was like so extreme. And I was just like, what the hell is going on? Like, I know I've been poorly, but like, this is a bit much. Like, you're being a little bit dramatic. So yeah. And then I went to see the cardiologist the next day, and I was kind of just sitting there like, it will be fine. Like, I reckon it was just, I don't know, like maybe I swallowed something wrong and I just got it caught, or, I was just kind of like trying to downplay it a little bit. And then they sat me in a room and they were like, no, like you have this condition, pericarditis, and it's inflammation around the heart. And they were like, we need you to be really careful because we can't let it go in the heart. So at the moment, it was just round it. It wasn't actually affecting the heart function. But obviously, if you continue to put your body under stress, it's never going to quite go away. It's kind of like, you know, when you have like inflammation in your ankle joint or something and you don't rest it, it just gets worse and worse and worse. So it's kind of like that. So I was very restricted in what I could do. I wasn't allowed to know, you know, I could walk up and down the stairs twice a day. I wasn't allowed to, you know, take my dogs for a walk, or, you know, a lot of the time it was just purely rest and medication, which also made me quite poorly as well. I didn't react very well to the medication, but then I was like, I have to take it, because if I don't, you know, I don't know if this is going to go away. So yeah, it was a really, really tough time. But, you know, I thought I felt unwell before it happened, but afterwards I was so unwell. I was, for a good 3-4 months, it was just constant fatigue, chest pain, just constantly just a reminder that I was unwell.
Oh my gosh, that sounds really, really awful. How did you I mean, this sounds like one of those situations where football was probably a secondary concern and gaining your health back as a person came first. And I'm curious, I don't even really want to get back into the football. As just a person who was feeling unwell and sick and going through this kind of traumatic time in your life, how did you start to make your way back to normal, and who in your life was there to support you through that?
I wouldn't have made it back to football, I don't think, if I didn't have the people around me, because I was an awful human being at that time. I don't know how I came out of it with friends, to be honest, because I think I was so moody and just so, you know, I wanted to be social, and I would invite people over, but then it would just take over me, and I would just end up sitting with my back to people, you know, and just not communicating, because I was just thinking in my head all the time, like, you're so ill. Why are you so ill? Like, people have come to see you. Why are you acting like this? It was like a constant battle of, I want to see you, but when you're here, I'm exhausted. So it was a really tough time, but I had some amazing teammates. Obviously my family as well, you know, traveling down to come and see me. My dad would come from Reading. My aunties would come from Newcastle. You know, people were making so much effort. And for me, that was one of the reasons why I got to a point, I think, you know, obviously I was unwell, so it wasn't a case of me going, right, okay, get yourself up. Come on, you've got to get on with it now. Like, it was a period of time that I had to give it to feel better. And I had an amazing doctor. His name is Francisco, and he was incredible. Like, the whole time he was so patient with me. He picked up the phone on Christmas Eve to talk to me because I felt so ill and I was just needing someone to talk to. And, you know, I wouldn't have got through it without them people, because I think when you're going through something like that, people see you at your most vulnerable, and not everyone sticks around for the rest of the journey once they've seen you in that kind of way. So for me, them people are very, very special to me, and people who I will continue to take with me throughout kind of the rest of my life. But yeah, I think it was just a moment where I think I woke up one day and I was like, oh, there's not a bad chest pain right now. It was honestly like a switch had changed, and I was like, oh, like, okay, right, okay, obviously don't overdo it, but, you know, you're doing good here. And I was trying to come back a couple of times, and I would go training a couple of days, and then I would be exhausted again, and then I would try again, and then exhausted again. I think it was like 3 or 4 times kind of battling to come back, and then it was COVID. So no one was playing.
Oh my gosh.
And I was kind of like, okay, like, I'm kind of feeling a little bit better, but there's nothing going on. So what do I do? So then I would go into training with Francisco, and we'd do one-on-one training throughout the whole of summer. So I was ready for that COVID year to come back, and to come back into training, and to come back in a good shape to show, you know, Emma, the coaches, the team, you know, that I was ready, and I was ready to go as soon as we kind of came back in. So yeah, I spent probably a month just training by myself. Obviously I was training alone during COVID and really pushed myself, but I came back a month early to kind of get myself going again, and just to test it as well, to make sure that, you know, I was ready.
That sounds like a lot. I think it's so hard to come back from injury or illness in that way. And again, luckily you had that support system around you to help you. So last year in 2024, you left Chelsea for Brighton, which, in addition to, as we've discussed, being a great place for dogs, is a pretty great place for people. I hear that there's beaches, cafes, a really nice art and culture scene. The club has always been very strategic on the men's and women's side, and they're making big investments, obviously, in their roster, but they're also investing in a stadium, which will be the very first English soccer stadium just for women. I'm curious what it has felt like for you to go from a place like Chelsea that has really established itself as perennial title contenders to somewhere with more of like an upstarty energy, a place that hasn't quite made its mark yet on the women's side, but feels like it's ready to.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was kind of looking into the summer, into looking where I wanted to go next, there was quite a few different conversations going on, and when I spoke to Brighton, I just got a sense of excitement. It was a sense of, this is something new here. This is, and of course, like I said, a lot of clubs say things, but actually, hearing their plans and hearing, they've built a state of the art training facility just for the women. They're building a stadium just for the women. They really want to invest. The club's ambition is this. And I was just a bit like, do you know what? I can see myself being there, and I can see myself helping them push forward. And obviously I've been in the game for a long time, and obviously, you leave a club like Chelsea, wherever you go, everyone is going to go, oh, well, she's gone there. So it didn't really matter for me where I ended up, because I just wanted to go somewhere where I felt valued and where I wanted to, help a team progress into something else. And it just kind of fitted so well. And obviously I knew a couple of the girls who were there anyway, and they've always been so complimentary of the people there and how the club is run. And I just got a sense of excitement, and it's still there. When I still go in every day and I see kind of what we're trying to do, the way that the coach wants to play. I think Dario is an absolutely great coach. I think any young player who's looking to improve themselves as a footballer, I think he is one of the top coaches out there, to be honest. And in the end, it became a bit of a no-brainer, to be honest. I think when I spoke to everyone at the club, and I was just like, okay, yeah, like, let's go for it. And yeah, I mean, obviously now, we still know we're not quite there yet on the pitch, in terms of performance, in terms of score lines, in terms of where we're at in the league. But, we're building, and we're trying to do something, and that's what makes it exciting. And I think in the next few years, I can only see it getting better. And I think that's when it becomes exciting. It's not just a stall. It's not just, oh, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. No, there's always another thing that they want to do and another thing that they want to push.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and I had a similar experience later in my career. I left a really established club that we had won a bunch of things in North Carolina, and I went to a newer club that was like building a women's stadium, and there was this really exciting energy around it. And one of the reasons I wanted to kind of take that risk and move was because I really wanted to like challenge myself as a leader to have some more like of the onus on me to set the standard and be the example and like push for more. And I'm curious, like, obviously we have seen Brighton invest in players like you and your teammate Nikita Paris. And I think from the outside, seeing names like that, players of that caliber going to Brighton is like, oh, wow, Brighton wants to do something really, really cool. Do you feel similarly to what I explained? Like, do you feel a newfound sense of leadership in that your reputation and ability is kind of setting a new stage for the expectations for Brighton?
Yeah, I think so. I think I've never really been a big talker in a team environment. On the pitch, I will say anything on the pitch. People used to get annoyed at me because they used to think I was too much, I think. I'm quite emotional, and I don't really think before I say. I just kind of it's just like, straight away, and it can sometimes come across hot-headed. Going to Brighton, I think, it's made me mature into a bit more of a leader. Whereas previously we've had so many, so you've just kind of waited for someone else to kind of step up. Like, I would say things if I felt a certain way, but, I wasn't always so vocal about things. Whereas I feel now, we do have quite a few leaders in the team as well. So it hasn't been like I'm just going in and I'm the only one that's speaking. So I think that's been quite nice as well, to kind of get to know them and see how things have worked previously. So then I could kind of bring in my own thing and be like, okay, but what about this? And what about this? And it's just kind of given a different dynamic and a different face, maybe coming in to saying something else. And yeah, I think it sounds crazy. I'm 31 and I feel like I'm finally maturing, basically.
I know, it's sneaking up on us. It really is.
Yeah, it is. Especially with these 18-year-olds now who are coming to play. I'm like, oh my God, like,
I know. I'm like, well, we better be mature. Like, these are literally children.
Yeah.
Well, I know that Brighton is like quite a unique club in a really unique city. Brighton's famous for its art and its culture scene. It's a major hub for England's LGBTQ plus community. How does the team represent kind of the city of Brighton's spirit, and how has the city embraced the women's team?
Brighton is a really fun place. When you walk around the pebblestones walkways and everything, and you go around the corner and you see something completely different that you just didn't see in another corner, and it's just such a fun, quirky place to be. And that's how I would describe our dressing room. I would say, we have a lot of
Oh.
fun people in the dressing room. We have a lot of really nice characters. We have people who can, you come in your worst mood and you walk in and you see someone's face and they're doing something silly, or we have a girl, Deki, and she sings in Serbian and, things like that. You're just a bit like, oh, wow, okay, like this is a different environment. But yeah, I think that's what a lot of the people bring in the changing room. And Brighton as well, it is a big football town. It is a big, like people follow the men's team, they follow the women's team, they want to be involved. And I think that's what's going to be so nice once we build this new stadium, and it's going to be next to the Amex. So, it's going to be next to where the men play. So it's closer to, where people live in Brighton, and hopefully, we can get more and more people down. And it's just made my eyes open so much more to how much, a place can love their football and love their team and love where they're from. And that I think is really special.
That's incredible. Well, I know that Brighton has amazing murals all over featuring musicians, robots, aliens, animals. Apparently, there is an entire building covered in dogs of like a mural. So this is our Olipop gut check of the week. Fran, if you could add a mural to Brighton's collection of murals, what would it look like?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. But I really need to go and find this dog one. Why
I
has
know.
no one told me about this in the team?
I don't
I can't
know.
believe that has not been a topic of conversation.
I know. I'm telling you. I mean, I guess you could bring Cody and add Cody.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe Cody in like a Brighton scarf.
Oh,
I think that might be quite nice.
I love
think
that.
would be nice.
The murals in the UK, like every time I've been recently, I do see like the addition. I feel like when you guys won the Euros, which is actually, I have a couple questions about that next. All those murals of the girls went up. I think there was one of Mary Earps and Chloe Kelly. And I feel like it's such a cool representation of the team and the growth of women's football to have like public art out like that.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's a really unique thing, I think, for women's football, obviously, at the time. And it just showed how much the public bought into us and realised how much we had done, not just, for sport, but for girls' sport, but also for the country. To win a major tournament for your country, not everyone gets to achieve that or gets to do that. So for us to be able to do it as a team and get that recognition and like you said, get the morals, get these appearances or go to these special events, that is all a credit because of what that team achieved, and also what the country achieved. We would never have achieved that if we didn't have the country behind us, because the way that people just fell in love with women's football in that period, it was so special. We were driving on the bus and people were outside their houses waving flags, beeping their car horns, and I was like, oh my god, this is for women's football. Like this is insane.
It's so incredible to think back on it. This was the Euros in 2022. Again, you and the Lionesses really became such national heroes when you won the tournament. You scored a goal in the semifinal, helping England defeat Sweden, who were then Europe's top team. And I just recently watched the video of this. After the ball went in, you slid across the field on your knees, so fired up. Do you remember what it meant to you and what was going through your mind to score a goal in the Euros and to just be on that ride? That incredible ride of momentum with your Lionesses teammates?
That was so special, I think, because for me, it was like a sense of relief as well. I think we've been to so many semi-finals previously and just never kind of got over the line. And I'd been a part of a lot of them. So I think for me in that moment, like we were 2-0 up, so I probably didn't need to be so dramatic with the knee slide, like it was going to be 3-0. But I think
it was your moment.
I just stole the moment. But I mean, I think I just had that moment where I was like, oh my god, like we're actually going to the final. And I think that was the moment in my head when I was like, we've actually got there. And I think that was probably why I looked I looked angry, I think, in my face when I was sliding across. But it was just a sense of just, thank God it's finally happened. And then it was when I got subbed, I sat down and I was like, now we've got to play a final. It was a kind of moment of oh my God, this is amazing. Then I was like, oh my God, this is the big time
all
now.
the pressure's back. I know.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It was so cool to see the impact that your team had on the country and the world. And the Euros are back this year. Euros 2025 kicks off in Switzerland this July. What are your hopes for this summer's tournament? And what do you think England needs to do to win again at the Euros this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's never easy to win a tournament back to back. I think everyone in football and sport knows that. And we kind of see that obviously people don't want us to do it again. And that's obviously the way that it's going to be. No one wants to see a team win 2 Euros or 2 World Cups back to back. It's just, everyone's out to get them. So I think for us, we just have to go back to maybe how we felt before the first Euros. That sense of hunger, that sense of drive, that sense of, okay, if we do this, we're going to achieve something so incredible all together. And I think that is such a powerful thing to kind of forget what's happened. Like maybe experience this like it's the first time again. And that's how I've approached every tournament. It's like a case of, until it gets to the semi-final, and then I'm like, oh my God, like this is just too much for me. But but I think you just have to go into it like you've not won it. And obviously there will be so many girls on that team who didn't win it, because of the transition and how the squad has changed. So for me, it's going to be a case of how can I help these girls experience what we experienced then, because there's no other feeling like it.
Yeah, I love that. I think you'll have a good balance of that experience, but also new players who I felt at our World Cup that we won, I was so young and so naive to the pressures that I just kind of coasted through emotionally. Like, yeah, it was really nerve-wracking, but I almost didn't understand how big the moment was. And I think that was like a blessing in some ways. I'm really excited to watch the Euros this summer. It's going to be awesome. This is my last question for you, Fran. I don't want to keep you forever. Well, I do, but the growth of the women's game has obviously been incredible, but you've also been one to point out that a big influx in fans has led to more people that feel entitled to comment on women's bodies, goals and assists and winning the Euros. And it's obviously so awesome, and that's the job. But I think that the work off the field that you're doing by talking about this will really leave more of an impression on the game long term. So I'm just curious why you felt it was important to kind of start this conversation about the way we talk about players and women's bodies.
When I first got asked about it, I was kind of a bit like, I don't know if I want to talk about it, because then I think you open yourself up to more abuse and more kind of negative comments. And I was kind of sitting there and I just had a moment where I was like, do you know what do I want to leave this game at? And, we both know that you can't play forever, whether that's, you retire or you have to stop because of a certain situation, a medical thing. And I just kind of had a moment where I was like, people are going to agree or they're not going to agree with whatever you say. So you might as well just speak and hopefully, you can help one person. And when I first spoke out of it, obviously there was the troll comments, but I think it was just a case of, I speak from my own experience with it. I have been subjected to it and it's never nice. It doesn't exactly help in terms of that. And it has sent me the other way as well in terms of, I would score a couple of goals in a game and go online and be like, oh yeah, she played well, but she looks pretty big in that kit. It was like, okay, she scored, but she looks big in her kit. And I was like, okay, that's a bit like, okay. And then it was other comments. And obviously you always read the bad ones. You always remember the bad ones more than you do the positives. It's what your head tells you to do. So then I went the other way and I lost a lot of weight in terms of, like on the verge of probably needing someone to step in and say, okay, like we need to do something here. Like you're not strong, you're not explosive, you're not doing these things. And, I think it took me the other way. And I think a couple of other girls have come out and spoke about it as well. I think I read Gory's as well recently with her food problems, and Alicia Russo also has come out and spoke about it. So I think the more and more we speak about it, the more and more it's going to help people who are going through it. And I didn't realize, not that you think that you're the only one that has that experience, but I had so many people message me from whether it was talking about themselves or a teammate that was struggling, basically saying, thank you so much for speaking about it. I know a girl who's read it and she was talking about it in the changing room and how much it impacted her, or I'm going through this. And I've had teammates that have gone through it. And I just kind of got to a point where I was like, do you know what? Like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, people are not going to agree with you. Okay. Like, that is going to happen regardless of what you say. But if it can help 2 people come out of their own situation, then why would you not say it? And yeah, like I said, I don't want to leave the sport just oh yeah, I had a great time playing football. I want to help and I want to drive standards in the women's game for the foreseeable future.
Well, I mean, you clearly are. I think, like I said before, obviously you are leaving such an impact on the game on the field, but speaking out about things like this is so important. I learned similar lessons in my journey with the national team fighting for equality. It is really hard to speak out and at times feel like you're putting yourself out there to be vulnerable or be attacked, but clearly you're having such a positive influence on the players around you, on us over here in America. So thank you for speaking out about this. I think it's a really, really important issue that more of us should be shedding light on. Fran, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for sitting down with me, walking us through your journey from just a young girl from Reading who felt like she had something to prove to the soccer world to really challenging it and changing it for the better. It has been such an honor to chat with you today. I'm so grateful that you could do this.
Thank you so much. Thank you. But you have to meet the main character first.
Oh my God, please. Yes, please. Yeah. Cody. Oh my God, he's big. Hi, Cody. Hello. Are you having a good day? Were you having a nap? Oh my God, he's so sweet. Does he will he eventually squirm or is he happy to sit there with you?
He might sit here till the end, but he will squirm eventually because I think he wants to go back to bed.
Oh my God, so cute. Wait, how old is he again?
He's 8.
Oh, I love him. Finn is not around, so I'm not gonna go on an adventure to find him, but he would love to say hi. Unfortunately, Finn was out of reach for me, so he didn't get to meet Fran and Cody, but I'll be sure to bring him back up here soon. I loved meeting Cody, and I loved chatting with Fran. I think her journey is really one of the most fascinating that I've heard about. She's been through so many ups and downs along the way, so I loved this interview. Thank you all so much for listening.